Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. A very warm welcome from a very chilly London in the UK. Here is today's news in electric cars and sustainable transport. My name is Martin Lee, and this is your EV News Daily for Friday, the 9th of February, 2018. And we'll start with a couple more bits of Tesla reaction after their earnings call and news about their production and what they expect to do this year. And this is news from Guggenheim analyst Rob Serra. Now, he pointed out after the shares had slipped nearly 2% in the last day on Tesla, that $3.3 billion in revenue for its fourth quarter was a historic high. Some of the points from his notes on the earnings call: particular attention was drawn to the credit sales. Now, you may know that some of the states in the US, car makers, automakers have to make a certain amount of zero emissions vehicles, and if they don't make enough, then they are fined, or they can buy credits from other car makers who are making enough. Now, of course, Tesla only make EVs, and so they sell other car companies EV credits. This quarter, Tesla made $179 million from other automakers in the US who aren't making enough EVs and therefore had to buy some credits from Tesla. Almost $200 million in one quarter as revenue, which was up from, in some quarters, just $1 million. Now, this analyst also points out there's a huge upside in the Model S and the Model X production, which I think was overlooked in the last 28 to 48 hours. It's all about the Model 3, isn't it? But a 10% quarter-on-quarter increase and a 30% year-on-year jump to almost 30,000 S and X models produced. Now, by 2019, Tesla will have 10,000 Model 3s produced per week. Some people have been talking about that target happening sooner rather than the next year. He reckons early part of 2019 is when that magical 10,000 a week is going to happen. By 2020, he says that energy is going to comprise 7% of Tesla's total revenues. And there was a lot in this report, but I thought we'd try and pick out a few things that hadn't been reported on and maybe you hadn't heard yet. And everyone's having their say about Tesla, of course. Now, moving on to Jalopnik's appraisal. They were pretty positive about it as well, actually. And they actually put a few quotes from Elon, which I hadn't seen. It was a written report that came with the earnings, and I hadn't caught that yesterday. According to Elon's note, he says this: 2019 will be a transformative year for Tesla, with a high level of operational scaling, as we ramp production of both Model 3 and our energy products, whilst keeping tight control of operating expenses. Our quarterly operating income should turn sustainably positive at some point later this year. And although we mentioned a moment ago the share price had dipped by 2% in the last day, that is all about Tesla's share price. It's jammed tomorrow. It's what's going to happen. Perhaps the Tesla share price, although it's huge now, could even be a bit of a bargain compared to where the company's going. Well, one of the biggest EV manufacturers in the world, certainly one of the leaders of public transport vehicles, is BYD, and they've delivered another fleet of pure electric buses to the streets of the capital in the UK here in London, and I see loads of them on the routes that happen near Waterloo train station, where my morning commute train goes into. This is Route 153, takes in Islington and the city, the financial district, and another 11 BYD. They're called Environ 200 EV single-deck buses. It's the fourth route going all electric in London, and we need to do it because if you've ever been here into London as a tourist, you'll know that our buses, whilst they're quite famous and big and red, are very, very, very stinky. And when I'm not walking across London, I'm always on the bike. And it's one of the worst things to do is just get stuck behind a really old, stinky diesel that just desperately needs updating. Now, Route 153 runs from 5 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, purely on electric, 7 days a week. On some of the most congested streets in the capital, going to make a huge difference to the air quality in a city which has already had a massively... January's been a really bad month for air quality here in London. Well, Chinese Uber nemesis Didi Chuxing is partnering with Renault-Nissan on car sharing, according to thedrive.com. They're seeking out some automotive partners to help develop a car sharing service based on electric cars. Now, why do they need to do this with EVs? Well, electric cars, if you can charge them quick enough, technically can run pretty much non-stop. Also, EVs have all the electrical power in them anyway to power all the other control systems that autonomous cars need. Well, the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance has been partnered with Didi Chuxing to explore future business cooperation on new electric vehicle car sharing programs in China. China's going to use a credit system from next year that's going to require all automakers to sell a certain number of electric cars and plug-in hybrids. Now, automakers are also going to be showing increasing interest in car sharing services, and it could benefit from teaming up with a company like Nissan that has experience in that area. Moving on to Hyundai, or Hyundai, I never know how it's meant to be said, and a brand new Hyundai Kona electric small SUV has been unveiled. Just a picture. Full unveiling February 27th before next month's Geneva Auto Show. We mentioned SUVs recently. We had the January sales figures here in the UK, and the biggest segment was SUVs. Now, this new model from Hyundai, has been designed from the start as an all-electric version. We know with the Ioniq, they designed that to be an EV, and they use exactly the same car for whether it's the EV or the hybrid or the plug-in hybrid, and they're doing the same when we see some more details about the Kona electric. 2 battery sizes, according to those in the know, the biggest being the 64 kilowatt hour. That targets a range, they say, of 300 miles, but that's likely to be on the Korean or NEDC test cycle. So what would that be? Maybe in the low 200s on EPA, or maybe around 200 on a cold day. Take off some miles for temperature as well. But look, an SUV doing 200 miles, that's kind of the benchmark which you have to aim for now. It's the same mileage that the Kia Niro EV concept, which they said is, although a concept, is going to be hitting the market in a pretty similar shape to the concept which was unveiled at CES in Las Vegas. They said 238 miles realistically. Takes them off for temperature and also a bit of optimism there. And again, you're around 200 miles, which is the whole Chevy Bolt territory, and that seems to be where people are settling now, and that's why there was a little bit of criticism for the new Nissan Leaf, that maybe on a 40 kilowatt hour battery it fell a little bit short, but we know there'll be an extended range version of that coming later in 2018 for a 2019 model year. Well, Geely has reportedly bought some shares in Daimler in a bid for an alliance. The German newspaper Bild am Sonntag reported last week that Geely wants to become Daimler's biggest shareholder. Now, if they buy more than 5% of the shares, they have to make a public kind of regulatory disclosure in Germany, and that hasn't happened. So we know they haven't bought more than 5% of Daimler, or Daimler. Whilst last November, looking back at the records, there was a report saying that they'd turned down an offer from Geely to buy a stake of 5% with a discounted share placement. Now, sources with knowledge of why this is happening say that Geely want to access Daimler's electric car battery technology and establish an EV joint venture in China. And finally, from China to India, and it's day one of Auto Expo 2018. It's going to see the unveiling of 65 product unveilings and 14 rollouts. 22 OEMs unveiling 65 products. On display is the much-awaited Honda Sports EV concept. Mahindra is going to be displaying its widest ever electric vehicle portfolio with their Udo concept, or UDO. I've got that wrong somewhere. The Trio, the E-Cosmo, and the 380 volt powertrain from them as well as lots more to look forward to when it opens to the public later on today, I think. Well, thank you so much for listening to another packed podcast. Loads going on right now. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'd love to spread the word about electric cars. Please do share this with one person who you think might be interested. A reminder, listen to all of our previous podcasts on iTunes, and whilst you're there, why not subscribe for free and get them all automatically when we publish every single day. It would mean a lot if you could just take 2 minutes to leave a really quick review or even a star rating, because that's how iTunes works, to spread the word about electric cars to a wider audience. Come and say hi on Twitter at EV News Daily, and have a wonderful day. I will catch you tomorrow for the weekend.